All right, welcome one and all to the fifth CTO webinar. We're going to give people another couple of seconds here to get signed in, but Ben, great to speak with you again as always.
Justin, good to see you, my friend.
Absolutely. Um, we've got a really exciting webinar planned. A few things that, especially from my perspective, having been, really actively engaged in conversations with our customers and with folks, practitioners across a number of different use cases and companies and regions. What we're talking about today is something that I think is near and dear to a lot of practitioners' hearts. So I'm excited to dive into it a little bit. But with that being said, as always, we want to first mention to the audience here that this is being recorded. It will be available for distribution after the fact. So, if someone wasn't able to attend, we can send this link out and they can get all the updates that we're going to be sharing today. Secondly, we are we want this to be as interactive as possible from the perspective of responding to the questions and needs of our audience. So please don't hesitate to submit your questions. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. For anything that needs to be taken offline, we'll also share our contact information after the fact as well, so that you can reach out to us and follow up on any of the things that we talk about today. But with that being said, let's dive right in. Ben, this is a topic. The theme for today is own data, and really, you and I have had a little bit of a chat on this topic because um, Maltego is a really unique tool from the perspective of empowering our customers to own their data, own external data, internal data, and a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is kind of focused on that. But as I always like to do on these calls, is mention, first and foremost that we've talked about a lot over the last several webinars, and there's some stuff that I'm sure the audience is interested in kind of hearing about in terms of updates and how things are going, and so I want to take a quick look back before we look forward here, and in that spirit, we we talked a lot about the various kind of improvements that we're making to our transform hub, to our capabilities, etc. Can you give us a bit of the state of the union on how things are going with regard to the transform hub itself, how traction has gone with our v3, et cetera? Just again, a little retrospective on some of the stuff we've announced and how we're looking today.
Yeah, that's easy. Transform Hub's trucking along nicely, continuing to add new data partners pretty much all the time. We're constantly developing new integrations, constantly connecting with new sources of data and getting them integrated and built in. That is, we're well over 100 data partners at this point, so that's trucking along. The data passes are continuing to grow and evolve. We've got several new types of data paths being developed and in betas. So we're continuing to expand on and scale that. And then the V3 stuff, we've got that now into a early adopter program where we've got data partners and customers actively developing things in the version 3 transform protocol and leveraging that to its fullest. It's pretty exciting.
Phenomenal. We love hearing that, obviously, and I think for a lot of folks who I've been speaking with, it's really important to know that Maltego is continuously investing in the advancement of the capabilities and aligning it with the evolving needs of our customer base. So it's great to hear that that continues to truck along here. And yeah, I guess that, maybe something that'd be foundational for the conversation that we want to have today is understanding a little bit more about our data landscape. What are the types of data that we're integrating within our platform? How are we looking at the data landscape in general within the Maltego ecosystem to kind of inform how we continue to make improvements and how we look at additional integrations in the future for what makes sense for our customers? Can you talk a little bit maybe about what the data landscape looks like today and kind of how we're thinking about that space for our customers?
I'll say, to start, a lot of it comes, right from customer feedback,
Yeah.
right from support requests and sales consultations about what kind of data people need. On the backside, we've got active research projects around evolving and managing our entity model going forward. So we're going to have, the entity model has gone through some changes in the past, and it's about due for another refresh to really
Yeah.
kind of get it into alignment with the existing frameworks and models that are out there now. So we're really working on how best to seamlessly transition from the existing model into one that is compatible with Stix and Taxi and all the different frameworks out there
Sure.
that users are actively leveraging in a way that makes it a seamless connection into what they can do in Maltego.
Yeah, and we hear a lot internally, within Maltego about kind of the vision for the company and really being more of a holistic look at collections analysis and remediation. And one of the things that I think a lot of our customers often associate Maltego with is all these external transforms that we do so well and allow people to integrate a lot of that open source and commercially available data within Maltego to do that correlation and analysis. An area that has been a capability for a long time, but I think that is continuing to gain traction. And I know that it's, a core focus for us today is what we, like to call like internal data or own data.
Yeah.
And maybe as a bit of a segue into our special guest for today, who we'll announce in a moment, but if we could maybe just take a crack at defining, what it is we mean when we say own data. What is own data for our customers? Because I think it's an area again that is understood by some extremely well, and they're already leveraging that capability today. But what do we typically mean by that for our customers?
In short, it's really any data you have in your environment that's useful in your investigation. In the long form, that can take would be customer or billing data. That could be infrastructure data. That could be your internal threat intel data. Anything you can really map to an API
Yep.
could be integrated with Maltego, could appear on your graph. We have some customers who do nothing but use their own data. There's a wonderful use case posted by a gaming company. Their entire in-game economy is available through Maltego transforms, and that's how they do fraud analysis, is looking at their data. We have other environments where everything comes in externally, and really I think the real power play is combining the two, where you've got either commercial or open source data, you're pulling it in, and then you're merging that with your own data to really kind of dial in on exactly what you're seeing and map that investigation to your environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such an important topic, and again, a great segue into our special guest today, who heads up our custom engineering team. But really, he and his team are focused on making sure that our customers are able to maximize the value of Maltego within their environment. And with that, I'd like to welcome Spencer Hale, who is joining us today as our guest of honor. Spencer, how are you? Great to have you on the webinar with us.
Hey there, great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. It's definitely something I'm very passionate to talk about. So
Yeah, well, and in that spirit, I guess I'll just kind of quickly introduce you here. So again, your team is focused on engaging with our customers, both during their due diligence process, of course, but also once they're a customer, and ensuring that they're able to get the most value possible from the data that they're able to visualize within Maltego. And I think again, a concept that has been around for quite a bit of time, has been mentioned. The ability to access internal data and understand what that means for our customers. I think that's something we'd love to dive a little bit deeper into today. And with that being said, maybe you can, in your own words, Spencer, talk a little bit about what it is that you and your team mean by maximizing the power of customers' own data, and what does that mean in kind of the Maltego context?
yeah, absolutely. So I think really, if we were to sort of step back for a quick second and talk about, yeah, like Maltego feels very strongly about, the value that combining internal and external sources brings to investigators and investigative teams. And so you can kind of think of my team and the mission of being very complementary to Ben's product team, and that they're building the products that we're providing to customers to try and help them unlock their own data potential. And then my team is really sort of the support structure for those products, and really helping to make sure that we're maximizing potential. Because again, yeah, we really firmly believe that sort of the best outcomes and the best situations are when we're combining both, a customer-specific internal data with external data sources. And so just to expand just a little bit more on kind of the distinction. So obviously, thinking of the Maltego hub as really kind of the sort of amalgamation of like external data sources. So this is really everything that can be leveraged consistently across all customers and across a variety of investigative flows, whereas internal data is where we're talking about highly specialized, highly specific data sources. Even if it's contained within tools or generated by tools that can be used across customers and across industries, there is enough sort of configuration or differences in how it's being utilized and how it's being configured that it requires sort of a specialized focus. And that's kind of the target for us for own data. And again, that's usually where you're able to really kind of find a lot of the meat to an investigation, because it's information that's really specific and actionable for a customer.
So I think that's thank you for that, because as Ben was describing some of the different types of data that we associate with own data, again from the perspective of Maltego, I think there's also a question of where does Maltego offer a value that some of my other tooling that may be leveraging some of that internal data, that kind of own data in a different kind of context. What is it that Maltego is doing differently that makes it such a powerful kind of component of a successful engagement with Maltego?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so a couple of the key elements have already been talked about, which is obviously our transform library, which right now is our V2 TRX library, but we're working on rolling out V3 with data partners, and then increasingly so with customers directly. That's a key element, and a lot of the updates that will bring is a key distinguishing factor. I think the entity ontology being kind of the other important one, because like in the end, it's the sort of entity modeling that really allows for that maximum potential of pivoting between internal data sources and external data sources, which is again where you get that maximum value. No. Creating an entity is easy. Creating the right entity is very challenging. And creating the right entity is obviously the most important thing for us to consider. I would also just say that, yeah, again, like what we find with customers is that there are a lot of tools that they have that are generating data and are helping them to kind of process and understand that data, but there's always going to be a very sort of like manual analytical element to their workflows. We're never going to be able to, automate things out completely. So with that sort of manual investigative analysis, Maltego is really a critical tool in being able to sort of bridge across tool sets, across teams, across investigative flows. And I think that, the product capabilities, again, with the transform library and with the entity ontology, coupled with, sort of where it's fitting within the ecosystem of technologies that are out there, is what really gives Maltego its power and value.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that. One area that I know a lot of folks who are probably on the webinar today are curious about, and certainly from people that I talk to on a daily basis, is understanding kind of what success actually looks like for customers who are leveraging this, right? So what are some of the success stories, or how do we think about, again, defining success when it comes to not just the technical ability, right, to integrate data, but like what is the metric, or how are people measuring success when we talk about those wins or those success stories?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's interesting because what makes it a little bit sort of challenging to define in a succinct way is also, again, sort of a value add, which is that when you've got Maltego plugged into your in your environment, you can really go so many different directions with how you utilize it and what success you get out of it. So sometimes teams need to go broad and they need to find as much sort of information as possible. They want to cast their nets wide. And Maltego is excellent in sort of getting additional insights and breadth of insights, again, especially when you're talking about these external data sources. And so we can help investigators find more information and more meaningful information a lot more quickly. So that's kind of one pillar of it. Another is being able to go a lot deeper, and again, that's where we're starting to now kind of pivot back into the internal data sets.
Yeah.
And so if we want to sort of like focus in on a particular incident or a particular person or things like that, it's really powerful in being able to pivot data source by data source to drill in deeper and deeper and find more sort of related events to kind of this one particular investigation or one particular element. So, success stories can range from a customer that has integrated their threat database along with their SIEM solution, and now they have their threat indicators that they're starting with, using external data source to enrich that to find additional information, additional indicators that they need to consider, and then bringing that back into their SIEM solution to be able to identify additional events that maybe they had sort of not suspected previously or thought were benign before, but now they're finding the correlation to events that have been confirmed as malicious events or things that they need to take action on. And so, go ahead. Yeah, jump
Sorry
in.
to interrupt you, but just while we're on this topic, one thing that just kind of came to mind as you were describing this, particular kind of scenario is that maybe a less understood capability of Maltego, even though again it's been a core capability for a while, is that we can be bi-directional when it comes to not just ingesting data, but also pushing data out into some of the tools and platforms that customers are using. And again, when we talk about being more of that holistic, all-in-one kind of solution that's supporting a significant portion of kind of that event or investigation life cycle, being bi-directional is like critical there. Maybe can you share a little bit, and Ben, this might be an opportunity for you also to share a little bit about when we think about the roadmap, and then also how we like support our customers in the implementation, Spencer, right? Ben, how do we think about how heavily or how much we want to focus on that bi-directional capability and building, improving the product over the next several years to align more closely to that requirement for our customers? Is that something you've heard quite a bit from our customer base about? Is that something that's a focus for us?
It's definitely a focus for us. It's something we definitely spend a lot of time thinking about it. The idea that you can not only gather information and bring it into Maltego, but create, analysis and understanding within Maltego and export that to your other tools. So, run a transform that adds it to a block list, or run a transform that adds some entity or a graph to a database containing threat intel information that you have. There are hundreds of ways you can map information that you've discovered or distilled within Maltego and map that into some other service externally. But yeah, we're definitely, from a roadmap perspective, we're definitely looking at ways that this bi-directional pipeline gets wider and more robust and more rich. And I'll just double down on what Spencer said, that the ontology and entity model projects are critically important, because as customers bring in more and more data sources, if you have 47 different IP address entities, they're never really going to merge together. So mapping all that into one kind of consistent format is really the turbocharger that makes all these connections happen super fast. I'll actually throw a question over towards Spencer. One of the things that comes up in my world a lot is kind of the security and privacy aspect of, all right, yes, I want this sensitive data in Maltego, but I don't necessarily want to send it anywhere else. I don't want anyone else to be able to see it. What are our approaches around that?
Yeah, I'll definitely answer that, and I'll try and cover it also with a little bit of a quick backstep towards Justin's question, which is that whenever we engage with a customer, one of the first things that we try and do with them is a sort of like mapping exercise where we're really trying to understand currently what are their investigative flows, kind of what are the steps that they take, what's the information they start with, what are the tools that they query internally or externally, what are they sort of, what are they wanting to get at each stage. And we find that fairly easily then kind of maps towards the transforms and entities. And certainly on the other end of that, the output of it is a key element to that workflow mapping as well. Once we've kind of gone through that design, yeah, we can absolutely talk through the details and considerations about security and privacy. And I mean, there are obviously a number. So number one, yeah, the data, the easiest one is that the data always stays on premise when we're talking about, their internal data sources. So you're building your own transform servers, which are deployed within your own infrastructure, and that information always stays within your infrastructure. Then there are also questions obviously around making sure that investigators and analysts only have access to the data that they should have access to and would, again, normally outside of Maltego. And we have, tools and also best practices in terms of implementing that. We have an OAuth, integration capability that is kind of a recommended pattern for enterprises. And really any of the security or privacy considerations that you would want to have with your investigators normally can be mapped in some way to their Maltego investigative flow as well. And then actually to even bounce back to you, Ben, I know that an increasing concern or consideration from the security and privacy front has been around, being able to audit what investigators have been accessing, because oftentimes they could be accessing, potentially sensitive data sources. And it's part of their organizational compliance standards to monitor who is accessing this data and what are they accessing it for. So I know that's been a common refrain, and I think we have some, product capabilities we're evaluating to support on that.
I would go beyond evaluating. We're developing at this point. So building onto the v3 transform protocol, the server that runs that is architected in such a way that it can act as a choke point, and we can do auditing from that perspective. So you can, lock down your environment and have, all queries routed through one central point, and, collect that information about, who's doing what, make sure nobody's looking up their X's, or, ensure that no cyber stalking is going on. Everything is involved with a specific investigation. But again, that data would live in your environment under your control.
So piggybacking off of that, and I know this is something that's come up internally a little bit as well, but are you seeing the role of data ownership kind of evolve in the market, right? Certainly we're hearing it from our customers, right? But I think part of what you're talking about, as the capabilities of certain tools like ours align to the compliance and regulatory standards that a lot of companies have to adhere to, the ability to leverage Maltego or tools like it in the context of some of these more sensitive and complex investigations that are relying on a lot of disparate data sources, some of which again have very highly sensitive information, or the end result of that investigation is something that has to be shared with someone, or that something will be audited. The ability to kind of show that audit trail is really critical. So are you seeing that evolution? I mean, Ben and Spencer, you both kind of come from practitioner backgrounds where you knew Maltego before Maltego. So I'm curious kind of how you've seen that evolve for you, and how much that's informing how you're not just developing the roadmap, but Spencer, from your perspective, how you're supporting our customers to get more value from Maltego. I'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a part of our thought process is, how can we make sure that Maltego is, both compliant to the customer requirements, as well as, as authentic as we can make it, in terms of making sure that, the information you get is exactly what you asked for, and where appropriate, there's an audit trail about what you're asking for the appropriate, compliance reasons.
Sure.
And where it's not appropriate, there isn't one. There are lots of sides to this particular puzzle. We're trying to, I think we've got a good plan to address all of it as part of the Maltego ID rollout, and developing that, next step of the Maltego evolution from a single user, single desktop environment to a tool that's used by an organization as a whole.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Spencer, over to you. Same question, but maybe again more from the implementation and kind of customer facing side.
Yeah, I think I would sort of reiterate an earlier point, which is that, I mean, just the sheer fact that, I'm, here in this role with Maltego and my team exists is because Maltego fundamentally believes that these concerns and considerations are of the utmost importance for many of our enterprise and government customers. And that we know that it's not something that can be solved exclusively through product. There are always going to be special considerations. There's always going to be, extra concerns or extra needs. And that's the entire reason that, I'm here and my team is here, is because, again, we really want to make sure that, our customers are successful with deploying Maltego in their environment. And one of the key elements to that success is going to be that any of their security, compliance, and privacy considerations are met. And so that's what we're here for, is to help sort of guide them through that.
Yeah, perfect. So maybe as a segue into like where the rubber meets the road here a little bit, right? So when we think about the folks, the customers of ours, right, and people who are considering Maltego, what is an actual implementation, or what is a discussion with your team, Spencer? Like, what are you looking for? What makes a good fit there? What kinds of data? How are we supporting them in evaluating how we can best, again, kind of like support their efforts to get the most value from Maltego? What are some of the things that you're looking for, or that you talk about with our customers in the context of like actually getting this thing implemented?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so whether or not they engage with my team or just kind of consider this as part of their planning efforts with Maltego, again, I think it's going to be always important to start with mapping or modeling, what their sort of like key investigative patterns or investigative flows are currently, because the technical implementation part is really the easy part. With the library that we have, as long as you are even like a script kiddie with Python, you're going to be able to write integrations. That's really not the hard part. The challenging part is the design. But as soon as you are able to kind of get through that mapping internally, or with us in support, you'll find that you're in essence basically modeling your entities and transforms out right away. So starting with that kind of exercise is important. Doing that internally or doing that by engaging with my team, we're happy to support on those. We've done a number of those. And I think even just, again, those like mapping exercises have been eye-opening for customers. We had one such situation where a customer was really kind of looking from a fraud investigation perspective only at internal data. And as we were going along talking through it, I just kind of made a few sort of like offhand comments about like, oh yeah, and then you can take this email address and query some of these external data sources, and you can find additional information that you could then pivot back into your internal data sources, and then continue that investigation even that direction. And the light bulb sort of went off above their head, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. And so, yeah, I think you'll really sort of find that you're able to really get sort of a solid understanding as to how, sort of Maltego will aid in your investigation, as well as sort of plot those early kind of design elements of using Maltego with your internal and external data sources by just kind of running through a little bit of that sort of a workflow mapping exercise. Beyond that, then it's definitely, just a question of sort of time and energy and resources. And so when we're working with customers, we really try and make sure that we're helping guide them and focus them in on the highest priority data sources. Not all tools and not all data sources are going to be equal in terms of their value or their impact to an investigative flow. And you could go about it from the perspective of just, integrating one tool entirely, or an entire, applications, set of databases and tables, but that may not be the most sort of effective or efficient use of their time. And so again, starting with that workflow mapping, the next step is figuring out what those priorities are, designing for those priorities, implementing those priorities, and then just progressively working through that list as often as you can, and sort of bringing more and more information into the fold.
Yeah, that's really great perspective, and I think again, understanding some of the technical requirements and some of the considerations there is really helpful foundationally, because again, back to the point that we were talking about earlier a little bit, that maybe we jumped off a little early, which is what kind of value additive, again, impact do we expect to see for our customers? Like when we talk about, what is the value to our customers in the context of being able to not just ingest your own data, but in general look more holistically at all of the different data and intelligence sources that are helping to guide, particular workflows, playbooks, et cetera. What impact does Maltego have for those teams, and how should companies and organizations as a whole, not just individual practitioners or users, but companies as a whole, be thinking about Maltego in that context?
Yeah, it's a great question. So certainly, again, especially like when we're engaging with customers, we really want to try and make sure that we're always sort of keeping what's like the ultimate goal or what's the end result in mind. So is that you have kind of a standard set of investigative flows that you are just trying to be able to work through those more quickly, or is it that you are hoping that Maltego will sort of bring additional insights or perspectives that you don't normally have or don't currently have? And so it really kind of depends customer to customer. But again, it's going to be something along the lines of having, deeper insights when you're trying to go deep on a specific investigation. That's maybe a little bit harder to sort of like put any sort of quantitative goals around that, or quantitative outcomes. But simply speaking, you're just getting access to more data and you're having more information on hand than you could have had previously. So that's sort of one kind of general outcome or general, success that we would try and shoot for with customers. Another big one, again, especially when we're talking about pairing internal data with external data, is making that information more actionable and in fewer steps. So rather than having to keep switching between screens and copying and pasting, and maybe there's information loss or maybe there's translation required, having that all within Maltego, and again, being able to pivot straight from hashes and IPs found within VirusTotal straight back into your SIEM solution, into your event history, is going to sort of get you the actionable information you need faster. So you're going to be able to see, oh my gosh, this isn't just one machine that's compromised, it's 15 machines that are compromised, and we need to be able to take action on those ASAP. So faster investigations that bring more actionable data is kind of another element as well, and that one is a bit more quantifiable in terms of time to investigative flow, and again, how many sort of actions are you taking at the end of your investigation?
Yeah, it's funny, as you were just describing that, it brought to mind a couple of things. One is that, Ben, for the last several months of this webinar series, we've talked a lot about kind of what is some of the North Star that's helping to inform the decisions that we're making and how we're prioritizing capabilities, right? And a lot of the narrative has been making it just kind of like more intuitive to work with Maltego as kind of that central point of not just access, but central point of engagement for all these different data sources and workflows. One of the questions that comes to mind is, in lowering the bar a little bit, because I'm sure, we offer a lot of great documentation for doing some of this yourself. We have teams like Spencer's that are there solely to support our customers and doing this themselves. Do we have on our roadmap kind of ambitions to look at like low or no code options for data integration to kind of help, again, kind of lower that bar for entry a little bit with pre-built connectors or whatever that might be, again, part of our roadmap? Or how are we thinking about that?
Yeah, I think there are a couple pieces there, and the short answer on all of them is yes. Low and no code, we're working through how to the best approach for a transform creation toolkit around low and no code. We've got to be we're trying to take a careful path here, because it's not a good look to bring down customers' databases just by querying in ways that don't align with their data models. But that being said, yeah, that's definitely part of the process. The other piece is we are both my team and Spencer's team building connectors with various tools, and building up a collection of those that are reusable and customizable to the customer environment. So yeah, we're definitely trying to build out that ecosystem of components and tools that make it easy and make it fast.
Yeah, well, and so maybe taking that and Spencer, to throw it back to you again just quickly here. uh, it has to be nice to work with customers, knowing that not only do we have some of these capabilities already, and that's exactly why your team is here to help our customers kind of unlock that potential within Maltego for their environments, but it must be nice to know that the roadmap also aligns to what I'm sure you've been experiencing with their customers. Is like, all right, how do we make this even easier for them so that the time to value is as short as possible, and then your team can focus on really the kind of the nuanced and very specific and customized kind of like use cases where it's a little bit more of a tailored approach versus something that it's a little bit more, I don't want to say that generic, right, but that one size fits all kind of model. There, it allows for some nuance there, but gets people a foundation to at least get started more quickly. How does that impact kind of how you engage with our customers and as you look ahead as well?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's really important to keep in mind that we're not simply an additional consumer, if you will, of like the product and tech, but
Yeah,
we are definitely, um, you know, like I said, we're passionate about making sure that customers are successful.
yeah,
So we're definitely customer advocates in terms of bringing the insights and information that we have from past experiences to the internal product managers and stakeholders to help hopefully influence future releases and things like that. And we've seen that with V3 protocol, which couldn't be more excited about, with streaming capability being really just a critical new feature for customers, again, especially as we talk about the changing data landscape with ever larger data sets. The sort of previous kind of synchronous request response pattern was just being pushed to its limits. So with asynchronous streaming capabilities with V3, it's just going to be a huge capability for us in helping customers, as well as obviously for customers themselves. And then with graph in, graph out, there's a lot that can be done to sort of streamline the investigative flow with customers. And so it's great to both have that ability to kind of like help influence the roadmap. And it's also great to sort of see that being like listened to and being followed to, because we can have a little bit more confidence also in helping guide customers with, hey, maybe this is actually something that you want to create sort of a temporary workaround for the time being. Or maybe this is something that, hey, you can hold off on because we're pretty confident that we're going to be releasing something around this in the next few months, and so you don't want to have to develop something and then develop it a second time. So having that kind of insight gives us a greater sort of advisory role with customers as well.
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that, Spencer. And so just to kind of recap I want to close the loop on this topic a little bit and then open it up for some other discussion here. But for all intents and purposes, one, we have a lot of great documentation already about the capabilities and kind of the technical roadmap for how customers can start to test the waters themselves and start to unlock some of that potential for their environments. We have resources like the folks here on the call and others on our team that are available should anyone want to reach out and start the discussion around how can we start to take advantage of some of these capabilities. But more importantly, Spencer, you and your team, right, are available to any of our customers or folks who are thinking about Maltego, to have that initial kind of discussion around, okay, am I a good candidate for leveraging internal data, and what might be the path to kind of unlocking some of that potential and some of that value. That's one of, again, the core reason that you guys exist, and certainly it's nice to know that dedicated team is here at Maltego to support our customers there. So we'll make sure that all that contact information is available after the fact. But just on that topic, anything else I'm missing about that before we dive into kind of one more topic here?
I would just say that I might regret this because I'm opening the floodgates, but I
Here
think
we go.
everybody's a candidate for a conversation, and we're happy to talk. Like, there's no cost to talk. There's no harm in talking. Like, it's a very small investment. And even if you might think that you're maybe not, suited or like have the right sort of setup or whatever for really kind of integrating your own data into Maltego, let's talk about it. Let's find out, and let's look at
Yeah,
it together. And if we really think that,
likely be
yeah,
surprised.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. In the end, it's obviously a question of impact and effort, and we want to make sure that we're helping sort of bring both elements, more clearly to the customers so they can make an informed decision. But again, yeah, we're here to talk. There are a few ways to get in touch with us, and yeah, I'm sure they'll be shared, either along with us or after the fact. So.
Yeah, wonderful. With the few minutes we've got remaining, Ben, we always like to talk a little bit about a peek at the road ahead here, and maybe you can share some things that we're kind of thinking about and stuff that we can start planting the seed a little bit here.
So a couple webinars ago, we talked a lot about the upcoming browser-based tools, time and space, link analysis in the browser, things like that. I'm very excited about the progress we're seeing right now. And what I'll say is stay tuned. There's a beta program that'll be starting relatively soon as a, both to help us, gather information about how it's working and make sure, our assumptions are correct, and to expose some of the new capabilities and get some feedback on how those are working. So soon to be
Awesome.
very exciting times.
Yeah, love that. Great. Well, Ben, first of all, as always, appreciate your time and for the insight into what we're thinking about in terms of our roadmap. Spencer, it was really great to have you on today. There's a lot of work your team is doing. It's so, I mean, obviously you and I have been interacting for quite a while now and have some really interesting engagements with our customers. But it's great to know that your team continues to invest in offering an even more kind of value added experience to our customers. So thank you for all the effort that your team puts in. We will put a link in terms of how to engage with your team. It's right on our website, but there's a way to engage directly with your team, Spencer. Is that right for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, if you're an existing customer, you can also reach out to your CSM. If you're a prospective customer and you're working with an account executive, then you can reach out to them as well. And if you're none of the above, then yeah, we have a link on the website that we'll, I think, be including in a follow-up email, and you can get in touch with us directly as well.
Awesome. Spencer, Ben, really appreciate the time. The audience, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time for the next CTO webinar.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
Have
so
a great
much.
rest of the week, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.